Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Between Two Studs. I'm Alex Studd.
And I'm Ron Studd.
And Ron, for episode 47 tonight on the program, we have Mr. Pat Whalen. How you doing tonight, Pat?
I'm so jazzed. I'm pumped. I'm razzed. I'm ripped. I'm psyched. I'm ready to do the pod. What's up, Studs?
Oh, my gosh. We are so honored that you're on. And I should have said good evening. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. I said good night, and we're going to touch on that. But
top of the afternoon to you.
Yes, top of. So glad you're on the program. We have a lot to get through in this episode. But before we get going, as tradition, Ron and I like to pay homage to both you and the official spirit of Between Two Studs, Malort. And Pat, from what I understand, you got a bottle of Malort by your side as well, right?
Let me just pull it out of my ankle holster. Yes, I have a bottle of Malort on me at all times, as is my right as an American.
As is every good Chicagoan.
There you go.
Are you going to drink right out of the bottle?
Fuck yes.
Hell yeah.
I love that. I love that. Hey, cheers to you and cheers to Malort.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Fantastic as always.
You know, Gatorade makes a grapefruit version. I've been told that they mix well. I've never had the guts to try, because why would you mix Malort? Why? What's the point?
Wait. So I agree with you, but if you had to mix Malort with a Gatorade flavor, which Gatorade flavor?
It's definitely grapefruit, because if you dive down and have drank it as much as I have and get past the earwax notes, you can get down to some citrus. And the bitter with the citrus, that's exactly grapefruit. So if you drink it and just think grapefruit, you will arrive at grapefruit in your olfactory system. That is my guarantee to you as guest number 47.
Not to be contrary, but I would kind of think, maybe I'm imagining this, but maybe it's a Mandela effect. I want to say, wasn't there like a lime Gatorade at one point? Like I could see like a lime and Malort kind of working well. Same vein, like citrus.
Multiple citrusy.
Right.
Yes.
Maybe that could work too.
Kind of a Take 5 situation.
Right.
What was it
right.
Five
Where you're
Alive?
getting all the
I forget
citrus.
what that was called.
5 Alive, that's it. Yeah.
5 Alive was the best. Oh my
Heck
God.
yeah.
It was the best drink of all time. And so I have thought of that. Like 5 Alive with Malort would be absolutely bananas, which is another fruit that doesn't have anything to do with this.
No.
But is a good descriptor.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you, by the way, on the grapefruit flavor. Because that's how I always describe it. I always say, listen, once you get past the first couple shots of like, whoa, what the hell is this? All of a sudden you start, it tastes like a grapefruit. Like in a
Exactly
good way.
right. It's exactly right.
Yeah.
And yeah, that is the thing. And that's what I tell people. It's like, you got to do like 4 shots with me, but we'll get there.
We'll get there together, one step at a time.
That's
I
right.
know it's going to be horrible taking shots, but, we'll get there.
I'm your Malort Sherpa.
Hey. So Pat, buckle up. You're in what we call the Ember round. This is the getting to know you preliminary stage, right? Yeah. Crack your knuckles. You're ready to go. You got the Malort shot in. We always like to know what's the connection between you and our show. Do you happen to remember how we actually got engaged?
Yes, we got engaged because I proposed. No, so I believe Alex, you came to. I want to say episode 46 for me, which is very close.
I know. I tried to time that. It just wouldn't work,
I think that was more me than you, but I appreciate it. I think 46 was Tony Preckwinkle. Is that correct? You were at the Tony Preckwinkle show? You were at the Governor Pritzker show.
No, I wasn't on that one either. I was at your most recent one.
Holy smoke. So you were there with Sharon Mitchell and Robert Peters. That's right, the Omize. Yes.
Yes.
So you know what?
That
might have been 47.
Oh, my God. It was fake.
Wow.
It was fake.
Let's just say it was.
And so I found out about your show, which we're going to talk about, but I found out about your show through mutual friend of ours, Dan Pogoszelski.
Dan Pogo.
The man, the myth, the legend, and he was a guest earlier in the season as well, where he talked to us. Oh, I got a Dan Pogo. Yeah, I got a giant Dan Pogo sign outside of my balcony that overlooks
Pogo
Sheridan.
for MWRD.
Hell yeah, yeah! And this is gonna drop this episode right around the time of the primaries, I think. So get out and vote for Dan Pogo.
Amen.
So that's how we met. That's actually the only time we actually met in person.
Right.
But it was a hoot.
A hoot and a holler. We had a good time. And I know we'll talk more about the show, but it's sort of a haze for me to get up there and I black out for a while and do the show, and then after it's nice to talk to people and connect and be like, how was it okay? And you were one of the folks, and we connected hard over a few things, which I'm sure we will touch on throughout the course of the pod.
So speaking of things that we're going to probably connect on, right? Tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe areas of interest.
I'm 6'4", can bench 280. No,
you don't say.
That's all false.
You said, I don't remember you being 6'4". I did drink that night, though.
Well, I try to bring myself down to my audience's level. So
yeah, makes sense.
No, I'm Pat Whalen. I'm from Buffalo, New York, city of tomorrow. I moved out here in 2005 to go to Columbia College for theater. I fell in with a great theater company called Jackalope Theater Company. Then got repped by Stewart Talent, which I'm repped by to this day. God bless Stewart. And I've been screwing around in Chicago ever since 2005. I'm really into kind of civic engagement, and I'm also just kind of a political junkie. But I'm also, I have that actor performer background, and I really like comedy. And so I try to use, the entertainment side of my training and, kind of my God-given or, Yahweh-given or what have you, universe-given talents, for good. I use my powers for good to try to get people interested and engaged in political issues, which are just not going anywhere, unfortunately. So that's my bag.
Yeah,
that's my bag.
Well, and I'm excited. I know we keep bringing this up. I'm excited to dive into this more because I think one of the things that frustrates me, and I've been very fortunate that I've been able to live. And we were talking about before the show. I think I've lived in 7 different states in my life, and I think one of the things that frustrates me is how little people understand the importance of local politics. I think people are so focused on who should I vote for the presidency? And I'm not here to say that's not significant, but in Chicago, for example, who your alderman is, right? Knowing your city council, that is so fundamentally important. And I think so many people are just uneducated on the basics. So I think what you do is a fantastic outlet to get a little bit of a glimpse into what is actually happening in our town.
Yeah, it's super important, and I wouldn't just I did used to, and sometimes on my tougher days will chalk it up to people are just bored and they want to gravitate towards shiny things and things of that nature. But it can be difficult depending on where you live. Chicago is blessed with a lot of great local journalism like WTTW and Block Club Chicago, and The U has an amazing show now with Brandon Pope, where they're really meeting people where they're at with these civic issues. It's kind of like the terms and service of life, it's important, but no one's going to read it. I don't have time to read all that.
I'm only reading the headline.
Give me the product. Yeah, exactly. Give me the meat and potatoes. And that's the presidency, which again, like you were saying, is important, but local politics covered by local journalism is it's everything. When people say I'm not political or I don't pay attention to politics, it's simply not true. They're either lying to me or themselves, is what I say. Because if you walk on the sidewalk, if you drive on a road, if you went to a school, if you've interacted in any way with society and the environment around you in an urban or rural setting, politics decided on how that would go down. So
Good
it
or
is
bad.
important.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%.
So speaking of important and good and bad, what are you currently imbibing of?
Okay, so I absolutely wolfed down a seltzer before I started, but I have
We saw.
Yeah.
Was it lime flavored?
It was lime flavored, but honestly, it was empty before we started recording, so I don't think that counts. So I have water in my "It's Not That Bad" glass, which I got from yes, that's from the Banner Company that's based out of Buffalo. I'm gonna have to look it up. But I love these glasses. They were sent to me by a dear friend of mine who I went to high school with, who's now a legal hotshot in the Western New York area. But what I wanted to show you guys, since you grew up in Olean, I believe, this is what I'm packing.
Oh yeah, LB's baby.
Yes, the official beer of Western New York.
It is. It is basic. Well, it's funny, and I always tell people this. Because a lot of people are like, I don't get it. Like, what's Western New York's obsession with Labatt? And I always say, well, listen, drinking age is 21 in New York, but you pop over the border to Canada, it's 18. And
what do you know?
What did every 18-year-old do? You go over there. What's the cheapest beer that was?
We stayed home and did our homework.
Right, of course.
Sure,
of course. Alex, my parents are going to watch this.
Just coincidentally, once we turned 21, we were like, I've been drinking this beer for several years now.
Yes.
I'm going to keep drinking it.
And drink it I can. Niagara Falls, Canada is kind of like that island in Pinocchio where all the boys went and it was like a giant carnival. Have you guys been to Niagara Falls with the giant Frankenstein Burger King? And like, it's a bizarro
I never did that.
existence.
I haven't done that one.
It was built to attract 18, 19, and 20-year-old Americans and attract us. They did. But the other part, I will say, is that Canadian beer is just superior to American beer in many ways. I think the American beer scene and craft scene is, doing amazing things right now. But, like, I think we're kind of IPA'd out. And in the same way that, like, Europe has laws that only, like, water hops and yeast, I think, can go into beer. Canada just... They mainline the Pilsners. They got it down. They know what they're doing. Molson Canadian, close second for me. But Labatt Blue is it's my go-to.
Yeah, I mean, my trick, I always say this when I go to tailgate Buffalo Bills games. I never show up with a car. I don't want to have to worry about driving. And I just show up with a 30-pack. I just show up with a 30-pack of Labatt's. And you very quickly... I can go completely strangers, and before you know it, it becomes the local currency. And I'll give you 3 Labatt's. You give me a hot dog, and you get and before you know it, it's just like it's a wonderful experience. And then you walk in hammered to the Bills game, which is the best way to go. Especially historically when they sucked.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. It was definitely a drinking town with a sports problem, as we like to say. But yeah, you show up with a 30 rack to the tailgate without a car. You'll find a ride home if you're smart. You know what I mean? It's the barter system. I will say, this is probably too deep a cut for your audience, but for you gentlemen, I went to a housewarming recently, and someone showed up with a 30 rack of Genesee Cream Ale.
Oh, wow. The Screamers.
Yes.
Screamers.
Those are bad. Wow. It is bad news. And I drank one, and it was warm, and I was like, yes, I still don't like this. But it's nostalgia,
Yeah,
for sure.
So for those listening, just to give you context, it's a Rochester beer, and everyone called them Screamers, and you can imagine not in a complimentative way, because the next day you'll be screaming out your butthole.
Talk about a milkshake beer. Stuff's heavy. You got to drink it through his straw.
So, speaking of that, Ron, what are you working on right now?
So. Tonight, I'm going for Suntory Toki.
Ooh,
love it.
Last week, for our last episode, I actually did have Labatt. So we're just off a week, but we would have matched.
No worries.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm pretty sure in episode 46 you were wearing a Bills jersey, right?
I was. So I was all buffaloed. So we're just crossing in the night. What about you, Alex?
I am actually drinking. That's before it's a gin. I got this in Portland, Maine. It's called Back River Gin. It's fantastic. And I'm not a gin guy, but I love drinking this, especially in the summertime.
You got to center it a little bit better.
Oh, here we go. This right here.
There you go. Center it a little more.
But I do have some Western New York ties. I'm drinking out of a glass that commemorates the 90th anniversary of the Central Terminal.
That's impressive.
Yeah. Well,
very nice.
It's a whole other conversation we can talk off the air, but Ron and I's great-grandfather worked for the New York Central. He lived in South Buffalo, and he was a locomotive engineer who took the train in and out of the Central Terminal every day. So anytime we go back to Western New York, we go back there, pay our respects for about 3 minutes, and then hightail out of there. So that's our story.
This is wild. I don't think I've ever connected with Western New York on such a deep level with anyone since I've lived here in Chicago.
That's fantastic. It's fantastic. So next question on the list is pick a piece of art. This is the fan favorite, Pat.
Yes.
Pick a piece of art, and that can mean anything. I mean, we've gotten a lot of varied answers since we started this program. That speaks to you, represents you, whatever, right? And tell us about it.
Oh, I don't know if this is cheating, but I have a few. First of all, I have my Che Guevara bobblehead, which is just funny to me because he would hate that capitalism.
Everything about that,
reduced him to what that is. I've also got my Buffalo. Yeah, fucking Bobby. He would hate it. Buffalo City of Tomorrow. That's near and dear to my heart. I got that on Delaware Avenue many, many years ago.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Then there's my Oppressed Oppressor Liberator, which I look at every morning when I get up. It's kind of a good motivator. It says, oppressed, the oppressed is kept down by others. Oppressor, the oppressor keeps others down. And liberator, the liberator sets others free. It's pretty simple, but very deep at the same time. But if I'm being honest with myself, it's this, which the stem is gone, but I've had this since my first episode of Good Evening. And it's the golden apple, which is a Greek symbol for truth. The truth. The unbiased truth. Truth that is not, peppered with your personal views on things, but the actual truth. And so I try to keep it handy or on my desk during all of Good Evening.
So I didn't notice that. So while you're doing these interviews, it's a constant reminder that, hey, every one of us, we have biases. All of us have, these natural propensities. But at the end of the day, that is eternal truth.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, that it does exist. It's kind of a debate throughout history as to whether or not humans can really see or experience the real truth, right? Because we're all, the sky is blue, right? Well, the sky's not really blue. It's just how our eyes see the oxidation. It's just an example. But you probably didn't see it because it was sitting behind my sippy Sears Tower here. Because that's always on my desk too. But it's always there just as a reminder that, the truth is that's kind of it, right? Like that's kind of it. Kind of all there is.
Yeah. Actually, I really like that. I really do. Let me ask you this. You said Sears Tower. And I'm just curious, do you get a lot of hate from people because it's Willis Tower now, or is everyone on board with you? Like everyone just no, it's not Willis Tower.
This was what I kept saying. What I got more hate for is relating it to the debate last summer about renaming Lakeshore Drive to Jean-Baptiste Pointe du Sable Lakeshore Drive, and everyone was like, "We're gonna have to change it. It's gonna confuse Google, and it's gonna change everything." And I was like, "Oh yeah." Well, meet me down at the Willis Tower and we can talk about how changing the names of things really makes a huge impact like that. Shut up. No one cares. Sears Tower, immortalized by the SNL skit of The Bears. I love Bruce Willis. He's near and dear to my heart too. It's actually some English hedge fund, I think, that bought the naming rights. But They're not here, so we can call it whatever we want. They're over in England drinking tea, being pompous.
So it's always Sears Tower to you. Always will be.
Yeah.
I think that's fair, and I totally get your point about, there's certain things you can name it whatever you want, but it's like I still look at the Bills Stadium. And I know we brought up the Bills a lot, but I still look at it as either Rich Stadium or the Ralph, right? Like New Era or whatever it's called now. I don't care.
No, it's Highmark. Is it?
Oh, it's Highmark. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
I still call it Duntire Park, and some people give me shit about that. But again, that's the thing about the truth, right? What is the real name of this tower? It's whatever you want. It's the Sears Tower.
Agreed.
I'm sure 10 or 15 years it'll be Willis exclusively, right? But let's ease into it.
I agree. All right, so our last question to get you out of this Ember round. Name one way that COVID has permanently impacted your life. And ideally, hopefully it's something positive. But like for us, we started this podcast. This was our kind of contribution on that front. Tell us about something in your life.
I was acting before COVID. And then during COVID, auditions stopped. And so I had to find something else to do with my time. And I got into civics, into politics. I was volunteering locally for my local alderman. And I then got a job at University of Illinois Chicago Medical School, specifically the infectious disease department, helping them arrange blood testing on the south and west sides to basically measure platelets through phlebotomy for antibodies in people's blood. And it was kind of the first time I'd had like a job that wasn't like the service industry or acting. And it sort of kind of changed how I perceived myself and like what I was capable of and what I wanted to do. And so that's still something that's ongoing with me. But that was an experience that really that changed me, because it really showed me that it's just people. Yeah. It's just people. It's all anything is. It's just people giving it a shot, trying
people
hard.
Are people.
Yeah. That's all anything is. It's just people doing stuff. So when you have like, I was like, oh my God, I'm working for like these I'm the only one who's not a doctor, and like there's all these medical students and an actor. And like I'm cracking jokes and like being uncomfortable and trying to help them learn how to approach people and ask them for their blood in the middle of a Chicago winter, which, as you could imagine, was a very difficult task. But I had something to contribute, and so it was interesting.
Yeah.
It was a very interesting experience, and I think it shaped how I view how we all fit together to form society, civilization, what we want it to be or what it could be.
Well, I do want to ask a little bit more about that, because I think that's really interesting in that maybe this experience has made you more empathetic. I mean, I'm putting words in your mouth, but that's kind of how I interpreted it. But let me ask you this. How are you still getting your creative juices out, right? Because I think it's amazing that you've gotten involved with civil service and kind of giving back to the community, but like you're a creative at heart, right? So how do you get that out?
It's tough. That's something else that kind of changed for me, is how I, when at first I started doing Good Evening, it was just a kind of a reaction to politics and my want to have something to say and make it about me. But I really had a chance, because I didn't do the show during COVID. And I did some one-off internet videos here and there, but it just certainly wasn't the same as performing in front of people. And so I really had a chance to examine, whether I liked it or not, my motivations and my approach to what I was trying to accomplish. And so the performing aspect of it is, it's going to be a theme. It's this truth. It's trying to get at something. And I watched a lot of Colbert and Daily Show leading up to the creation of Good Evening, and that started specifically more so with Colbert and less so with Jon Stewart, as a pompous, I already know everything approach to things, and then I would have these guests on who are older people or civil servants or MWRD commissioners or what have you, and I would go in and leave with doubts as a character. And so that's something I try to stick to, that it's not me up there. It is a character, and I represent kind of through the course of producing the show and the audiences watching the show, hopefully, journey of learning something, which does speak to the empathy that you're talking about, because you have to kind of put yourself outside of yourself to take in a different perspective. So those are the high-minded, idealistic goals of the show, and that's how I try to examine the process and how I try to get it out.
Love it. So, Pat, congratulations. You've made it out of what we call the Ember Round. Yeah. Pat yourself on the back on that one. Yeah. So, Pat, at this point, we go into what we call the speed round. And we're gonna hold you accountable for this. We're gonna give you a bunch of topics, and kind of as we talked about the Ember Round, you have a lot of Chicago, you have a lot of Buffalo love. So we're gonna cover a lot of those. We're gonna give you a word or a comparison or a topic. You have 5 words. We're gonna hold you 5 words or less, right? If you have one word, if you have one word, yeah.
Sometimes it's appropriate.
Then that's fine. But you have up to 5 words to describe what we're going to throw at you, and then we might ask for more detail. We might say, all right, give me more. Ron and I are going to go back and forth. We're going to give you these. We're going to hit you with them, and you just give us up to 5 words. And like I said, we'll probably ask for more, but initially 5. Ready?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to go first. Anchor Bar versus Duff's.
Duff's by a long shot.
Heck yeah, I agree.
I agree as well. I think everyone goes to Western New York, from Western New York, would acknowledge, yes, Anchor Bar, they might have the history or whatever. Come on. Duff's is much better.
Interestingly enough, though, I'm actually going to Anchor Bar tomorrow for my daughter's birthday. So there's one in Atlanta.
There's one in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Crazy, huh?
So,
well, there you go.
All right. Chicago Italian beef.
Like I'm writing a haiku. Broad-shouldered sandwich, a revelation.
Yeah, I mean,
that does seem like a haiku. I love it, though.
Do you, I have to ask about this. So Pat, when I have visitors who are not from Chicago, they come to town, and they're like, hey, we should get the deep dish, right? And I'm like, listen, I'll get the deep dish for you, but, like, that is not what locals eat. Right? Locals, if they're eating pizza at all, it's tavern-style pizza, but, like, really, you should get the Chicago Italian beef or, like, the hot dog thing. Do you agree?
I do. I lean more towards the pizza, because people are typically breezing in through town, don't have a ton of time to go all over the place, and so it can be kind of a tough sell to go to, like, the cool spots, because they have to Uber, like, past the West Loop. Like, what? Well, why? Like, it doesn't exist. You know what I mean? Like, getting them out of their comfort zone, depending on who they are, visiting Chicago can be difficult. So the sandwich route is definitely one to take, but I push people towards the tavern style.
Yeah, agreed. Beef on whack.
Beef on whack.
use less than 5.
Right. Not wings. The real deal. Did I already say the real deal?
It's all right. You can use it again.
It works.
Yeah, and I'll say this. Pat, I think, by and large, not a lot. There are places in most towns where you can get decent chicken wings.
Right.
I wouldn't say a lot, but you can find them, right?
Yeah.
Right? And so, as long as they hold true to the blue cheese thing, I'm happy with wings. I don't go to Western New York craving wings. I want to get wings while I'm there. But what I'm really craving is the beef on wings.
Exactly. You
well,
can't
I think
get
too, just to add to that, not only can you not get it, but it's also like one of the few foods that really, really does a great job with horseradish, right? Like, what other foods can you think of that you would have with good horseradish, right?
Exactly.
And it really knocks it up a notch.
You don't see a lot of roast beef sandwiches, you don't see a lot of Kimmelwick sandwiches, and you don't see a lot of sandwiches with horseradish on them. And we do all 3.
Boom.
Charlie the Butcher, my boy Chuck, right by the airport.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, actually, Pat, I'm sure we're not the only ones, but when I usually land, that's usually the first place I go.
It's a good
I'll go
one.
there, and then I'll go into the city or whatever.
That's a good one. I usually go take the elevator.
All right, so we already talked about...
Yeah.
Nice. So we already talked a little bit about Malort, but Malort is a really significant part of this next one, the Chicago Handshake. Tell us about that, Malort in Old Style.
My go-to, if I'm going to a bar and I'm like overwhelmed and I don't have a menu and it's too busy and like I have one shot with the bartender, I go, give me a handshake. It's what I get. It's my go-to at a new place.
Amen. Amen.
Absolutely.
And the divier the bar, the better.
100%. You don't have to think about it. Neither does the bartenders. You know you're going to get quick service. You're not giving him a headache and saying, "What's on tap?" Just you know what I'm looking for. Just give me that, and we'll catch up.
All right. Hey, Niagara Falls.
If I have to.
Totally agree with you.
Lake Michigan?
People, something to behold. I'll give that 3 as well.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
And
Can I?
It's beautiful.
I always think of Lollapalooza a few years ago. I think it was when there was still a red eye. They asked this band who was touring for Lollapalooza, which city do you prefer? Because they were from New York. Do you prefer New York or Chicago? And they say, we love Chicago. And they said, why? And they said, because you have a fucking lake. New York doesn't have that. Like, New York does not have the ocean where you can go chill on the beach. Certainly not in the city. I think that Chicagoans, it's undervalued. If I can change my description, underrated. Having Lake Michigan,
I agree,
vastly improves the quality of life in this city.
I think Dan Pogo would agree.
He would. Keep it clean.
Okay, so these last 2 ones, I really think are just one-word answers. They're one word, right? It's either Buffalo or Chicago. You're going to piss off half the audience, but you're just going to go with it. Who has the worst winner?
Chicago.
Really?
Yes. And I will tell you why.
Okay, let me tell you why I think real quick first, and then I want you to respond. Because I always say Chicago's colder, no doubt about it, but Buffalo gets more snow. That's what I say to people.
I agree. But the other factor is that Buffalo is always prepared for snow. And Chicago is always surprised. Oh, look, it's snow. No, it's winter again. Buffalo has 15-foot plows. What do they have here? They have garbage trucks moving stuff. Like, Guys,
Yeah, actually,
it happens every year. You feel me? We didn't have snow days in Buffalo,
No.
but we get
No.
more snow.
You get-
no.
You
So
get more
I'm-
extreme cold days than
exactly.
ever snow
when they
day.
couldn't start the buses because the oil froze, then you didn't have
Right.
snow. But snow, then you didn't have school. But snow would not keep you from school. So as a person living in a place, you know, if I'm a bird, yeah, Buffalo has worse winters. But as a human, Chicago has worse winters because they're never fucking prepared. They're always surprised. Buffalo is always ready. Can't catch Buffalo
what?
off guard.
You converted me. I've been telling people, I go, oh, well, Buffalo's way worse in winters because of the snow. But you're right. You're totally
I say the
right.
exact same thing. Alex, I say the exact same thing. I tell people instead of like being like, no, like what? I say Buffalo gets more snow, but Chicago is definitely colder and windier. So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, if I'm a stray cat, Buffalo's worse. But I'm not.
All right, final one. When it comes to pizza, Buffalo or Chicago?
This is ours one. But the answer is Chicago.
I'd agree.
As I put the question together, Pat, I was conflicted myself because the one thing that Buffalo, I think, has over Chicago is they master the cup and char. The cup and char pepperoni, they
Agreed.
master it.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. You are a North Sider, Alex, and I will tell you that. Oh my God! Why can I not remember the name? Oh my God, that's going to drive me nuts. But there's one place up here, up north, in Rogers Park, that does cup and char, and it's
Really?
so good. The pan pizza, and they have tabs. This is how good it is. They have tabs. You pull the tabs off. You collect 30 of them. You get a free medium pizza. I have gotten
JB Alberto's.
It is JB Alberto's. JB Alberto's has the pan pizza because people always say with the
I
salmon
agree.
salad and the deep dish. The pan pizza with the cup and char is fire.
The
Absolute
second
killer.
you said Rogers Park, because that's my pizza place. Like if I
Dude,
want
it's
to
so
get,
good.
and it is as close to Buffalo style cup of chard there is
Exactly.
out here. You know,
And you got to get the pan.
I do think
because
there's
the crust is similar too to the Buffalo style as well.
yeah.
The sauce is not
I
as
do
sweet,
think
which I can forgive.
Yeah, I do think there's more variance in Chicago. I mean, you can
Agreed.
get the deep dish, and there are places that they have the New York style, right? Like there's more variation versus Buffalo is a very specific style where it's kind of sweeter sauce.
Yes.
You got the cup and chard, and it's a little bit of a thicker, like airy dough.
Yes.
And I love it.
Bocce and a lot sweeter sauce in Buffalo. And I mean, let's also say that like birthday, christening, graduation, funeral, it does not matter what the event is. You're getting pizza and you're getting wings. Every time you get people together in Buffalo, you're getting pizza and you're getting wings. So you always have it. In Chicago,
You can
it's less
cater it at your
common.
wedding.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I'm getting Pequods for my rehearsal dinner.
Mm.
But you have
Amazing.
everything here. You have Giordano's, which is not bad. You have Gino's East, which isn't terrible. You have Pequods, which is its own thing. You have Vito and Nick's. You have Italian Fiesta. You have Bert's out in the Burbs. You have there's such a variety of deep dish and tavern style alone. There's so much going on here. And now you have the new ones like Millie's in the Pan and Georgie's, both Northside places. Alex, if you haven't tried Georgie's on Clark, it's in Edgewater. Oh my guy! Like you need to order your pizza like a week in advance because this guy is just making the dough. And then the other one's on Argyle. It's called Millie's in the Pan. It's kind of the same thing. We could do a show just on that. I'm going to shut up.
As you say, Pat, I need to hook you up. I need to pick your brain on all Edgewater institutions.
Dude.
So for variation reasons, you're going with Chicago, right?
Yes.
Makes perfect sense.
I mean, I would also think, though, just to add on to that, I mean, like, Buffalo has their wings, right? Chicago has their pizza. Like, you know that those are things. Not to say that it gives you a 100% pass, but like even then it's like getting into like pizza, right? For Chicago, you've got various styles of pizza. Even in Buffalo, like the wings aren't just, oh, here's the Frank Red Hot and here's butter. There's your wings. Everyone's got their different style of wings. And I think that's kind of, definitely, don't get me wrong, Cup and Char is awesome. But I think there's probably, and I haven't had much Chicago pizza, so I can't even talk about it, but I would think, just for those reasons, I would give Chicago the pizza.
There's like, if you've heard of the MCU, this is the CPU. It's the Chicago Pizza Universe. There is so much going on. And it all converges together in a very cool way. I'm trying to do, for my bachelor party, the Steve Dolinsky pizza tour, which is just like a history lesson just on pizza. Again, I could do a lot of talking just on the pizza, but that's all I'll say. Chicago wins, and it hurts me to say that.
Yeah, no, but you convinced us. You convinced me, that's for sure. So, Pat, what we're going to do, we're going to go to break. We come back, we're going to get into your career, some of your acting, and we've been laying it on pretty thick about this thing called Good Evening. We haven't actually gotten into the meats yet, so we're gonna talk about that in the second half of the show. We'll be right back.
See you soon.
We hope you're enjoying this episode so far. Wanted to let you know that if you ever need to reach out to Alex or myself, feel free to email us at between@twostuds.com. Again, that's between@twostuds.com. We'll get right back to the program. Enjoy.
All right, we are back. Welcome back to Between Two Studs. We're hanging out with Pat Whalen, and we're going to get into a little bit more of his acting career now. So I know you grew up in Western New York. We already talked about that. You moved to Chicago for college, and you very quickly got into theater. Can you talk about Chicago theater? What makes theater in Chicago so special?
Absolutely. Improv has a lot to do with that. The Second City has a lot to do with that. I have my own opinions about where the Second City is now in terms of how, much like Portillo's, they've gone in a more corporate direction. But they are also, like Portillo's, basing that off a very real foundation of success. Del Close created improv here, and that's what gave us Adam McKay, which a lot of people don't talk about, I think, as much as like a Stephen Colbert or a lot of other, Tina Fey's and incredible improv stuff coming out of here that really influenced the town's ability to improvise off more traditional theatrical traditions. I kind of think about it like jazz, where jazz was a combination of the blues and like more European classical influences. I think Chicago is an influence of improv and more traditional theatrical elements. And so I went to theater school and I learned a lot about, the history of theater and things of that nature. But I went to Columbia College specifically, because don't do a huge pull of Malort before you answer a question. Just a tip for those at home.
For those who are just listening by audio, the reason I was struggling to bring us back from break is because I was watching Pat just going to town on the bottle of Malort.
It was beautiful. Grapefruit. I noticed that before we went to break. I mean, you might share something with me in common there, because I've definitely polished off a significant portion of one of these one night.
It's delicious.
Just a good drink. It is.
It's acting fuel, and it'll hydrate you if you think hard enough. That's not true. Don't do that. But my dad he tried to retire, an engineer. And he said, if you go to engineering school, your teachers are engineers. If you go to medical school, your teachers are doctors. If you're going to go to theater school, you should go to a school where your teachers are currently acting for a living. And Columbia College gave me that, whereas some acting departments will be just people kind of reading out of a book, or they'll have training, but they don't actually practice anymore. Nothing wrong with that, but he wanted me to be more practical about how to live my life and survive, as an artist and not be a starving artist, if you will. So that's what I found at Columbia, and Chicago is very unique. And I know I'm kind of getting ahead of myself with the interview here, but when I was in school, the pipeline was: are you going to go to New York or are you going to go to LA? New York was a bastion of theatrics and obviously Broadway and off Broadway and black box acting and Stravinsky. More serious. Not Stravinsky. He was a violin player. I'm thinking of someone else. I can't remember who. Malort. But it's a theater town. It was, and I went to school in 2005, and LA was film. It was television. It was camera work. It was very different. And so which one are you going to do when you get to the end? But by the time I graduated, the internet and devices and recording and data storage and data transmission had changed in such huge ways that you didn't have to choose anymore. And so I graduated and I decided to stay because the pizza's better here than it is in LA. No question. No question.
There. Yeah.
No question.
Yeah.
And the winters are better here than they are in New York. And that's strictly because New York is just a difficult place to live when the weather is hard. But seriously, you didn't have to go anywhere. And you see it now with a lot of filming of shows. Obviously, Chicago PD, Chicago Fire, Chicago Med. Those didn't exist in the Dick Wolf universe. He was doing Law and Order strictly in New York. So much had changed by the time I graduated that you didn't have to leave. You could have your cake and eat it too here and learn about theater. And one quick story I'll tell is that Sean Graney, who was a founding member of the Hypocrites, which is an interesting theater outfit here that I believe is since scattered to the wind, unfortunately, but did a lot of interesting work revolving around ancient texts. And he found this old French satire from, I think, the mid-1800s called Ubu Roi. And it's spelled like Ubu Roy. And it was this very old text, and it was a satire about the king. And so it had all this historical context. But he said, this is a satire. And so I'm going to do it to the hilt as just a joke. And we're going to fuck with this script. And we're going to have dick jokes. And we're going to fit as much modern crass stuff into this script as we can. And so it turned out obviously very different than at the opening of Ubuwa in France, the audience basically got up and left because it was so satirical. It was to the point of blasphemy against the crown, and it was considered very crass for its time. And so true artist that he said, I want to do something crass that's considered crass now to try to make the audience leave. But this was my freshman year, and it was a main stage production, and it was unheard of for a freshman to be cast in a main stage production. So I'm calling my parents back home being like, oh my God, I'm hanging out with the cool kids. I'm working with all the cool professors, and we're doing all the cool avant-garde stuff. And they're like, cool, this sounds great. And then they came out to see it, and they were like, oh,
this is shocking. And
wow, this is what you've been, wow. So that was an interesting kind of confluence and an interesting way to see the rubber meet the road about art. But I think New York is very much industrialized and LA is very much monetized. And Chicago still has a lot of room to grow, Second City aside, no offense, for real risk-taking art, which is how new things are made. And that's the cutting edge. And that's why people still go to theater. So that is a very long-winded answer to your question about why Chicago is so great for theater.
You answered a couple of questions that we had. So I love that. And, it's interesting because you're so right about the improv. I mean, I don't come from the world of theater at all. I don't really consider myself necessarily that creative. But it is amazing how many of these small micro theaters all across Chicago that are constantly doing these strange and weird and fun and interesting. I mean, my mother-in-law was in town 2 weeks ago, and she loves going to theater. And she was like, hey, there's this thing. Let's go check it out. And they did 60 plays in 60 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
It was in Andersonville. I think that was
the Neo-Futurists.
Right? And it was totally...
An incredible institution.
Yeah, and it was just totally strange and interesting and fun, and you could tell that the cast was having fun. And it's this small little tiny theater, but that's happening every night somewhere in all across the city, and you just have to go look for it. I guess that leads me to my next question, Pat, which is outside of the obvious, which is, hey, go to these shows. How can people who are listening support their local theater?
I think you should support your local theater outside of buying tickets. You should support them digitally. And so whether that's following them and interacting with whatever content they put out on social media, and also going to whatever events that they're doing right now. If you have a local theater company that you would like to support, or you've seen a few things that they've done, just know that they're hanging on by the skin of their fucking teeth right now, because obviously for the past 2.5, 3 years, they haven't been able to do shows. So if they're doing any sort of events right now, and I know we're talking about outside of tickets, you need to support them in any way you can. Now, if they haven't been able to do live shows in the last 2.5, 3 years, and they've been probably working on other types of content, whether that be streaming or social media, or working on letting people get to know their company members in a digital way, it's really important that this kind of stuff doesn't die out because of the old 19. And so I would say if you have a local place, I think about it like restaurants, right? A lot of chefs will talk about local like eatery scenes in other places, and they'll say you should have a rotation. And like if you're going to go out once a week or once every 2 weeks, you should have like 3 diehard places that you know you love on your rotation, and you go and you support those places. But your last placeholder out of 4 should be open, and you keep that rotating, and you're always looking for a new one. And so it's kind of a cage match in a way, of where you find one that works better than one of the other 3, then you replace it and you keep going and you just keep rotating. And so look for ways, because all theater companies are going to have approached this like COVID stuff differently. And so look for something that you can gravitate towards. Don't force it, but like, they're hurting, and that's serious business.
Yeah. So I know one of the questions that came up a little bit during our break is you've actually kind of done the trifecta of voiceover work, theater work, and film. And for those that don't know, those are all very, very different styles of acting. Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I don't know I do know you guys are sports guys, so you've watched your fair share of sports. So last year, if you're watching football, there was a FanDuel commercial where Jamie Harrison of the Steelers tackled a guy on his front lawn.
Yes.
I was the guy he tackled.
Really?
No way!
Yes.
That's awesome. Acting.
So that's commercial. And the theater thing, I'll say, is the washing dishes metaphor, which is in theater, in a small theater, when the audience is about as far away as this camera is from me right now. If I'm washing dishes, I'm just washing dishes and I'm talking to you, and I'm, washing dishes as I talk, but I'm really talking to you while I'm just washing dishes. But in theater, you're washing dishes.
Right,
Here's a
right.
dish that's done, and here's the next dish. I'll keep washing dishes. And that's more of like a formal musical way of interpreting it. But those are 2 kind of different ways of looking at bigger or smaller houses, more realistic forms of art, more less realistic forms of art. And voiceover is its own thing. I've done almost strictly, not strictly, but almost strictly commercial stuff. And so typically, products are being sold through many filters where, if I'm Toyota and I'm selling cars, not that I worked for Toyota or did voiceover for them.
You might
if
tomorrow.
I did, they'd have me. If I had done that, they would have had me sign an NDA, and so I wouldn't be able to talk about it legally.
Right, of course.
Right. So there's that. But hypothetically, if I were to have done a spot for Toyota, then they sell cars. They don't know how to make commercials. They don't know how to do voice, right? So even visually, like, they can understand commercials and say, okay, so we'll hire this marketing firm because we've seen their work that they've done before and we like them. But if they're going to do voiceover, then you have to get that across without visual. You have to do it strictly sonically speaking. And it is apples and oranges. They're completely different things. And 9 times out of 10 with voiceover, I find you think it's going to be one thing and they're going to ask another. And I've heard horror stories of people working like 9 hours in the booth to try to achieve something that's just so ethereal and so just out of reach, but that the client knows we can achieve. it's also the easiest and most lucrative form of acting. Like voiceover is the most competitive form of acting because you can do it from anywhere. If you have a booth at home, you can work from home. It's the original work from home, and if you do it right, you can be done like that.
Right.
A film shoot is all day, easy, sometimes weeks. So they're all very different in different ways. And then something else we touched on with theater is you can get to a point where you rehearse it so many times and you do the same thing over and over and over that then you really find like room within what you've rehearsed and perfected to play. And that can be a lot of fun. And that's where improvisation can come in, but kind of depends on the director and how open they are to you screwing with the vision that you achieved in rehearsal. So that's kind of a crash course of the three versions.
No, it was excellently answered. I know one of the things for awareness, I actually did some voice acting myself with anime, and that was a really kind of different type. Yeah. So that was something. Yeah. And that's the thing is it's like I had a friend who went to Buff State for directing, and he had me do some voiceover for something, one of his documentaries, and it was like he was very succinct with like, okay, it's not like theater. You have to tone it down because when it comes to film,
right,
every single thing is picked up. So even just speaking monotone has its own thing. Whereas with theater, like you said, you have to be thinking about that person in the audience who's sitting way in the back, and they're trying to figure out who your character is. Right. Yes. So not just in the performance, it's also in your voice. It's everything. And voiceover is also weird too because you really have a very limited opportunity where people don't necessarily see you. They just hear you. And in the case of anime, or in the case of a commercial, that voice, that succinct, silky sounding voice that just says, ooh, bye, does that. Or when it comes to like anime, if it's like, this is really upsetting me, I need to go do this, like that sort of thing, it's perfectly applicable. And it really kind of depends because, especially for cartoons, it can be almost over the top. And that's what's expected and what's needed. But it's so weird too, because your director will help you too with like for voice directing. And that was something that I was surprised by. Sometimes it is something like you said, where you can just do it the first take and it's just perfect.
There it is.
And then there's other times where it's like, let's try that again. And even with anime, what was weird is you were also trying to fit the lip flaps of the characters.
Right. Exactly. Like what you say has to fit what it looks like you're saying. I was a big Toonami guy. A lot of Dragon Ball Z when I got home from school.
Oh, yeah.
So I understand
Next
what you're
time
talking
on
about.
Dragon Ball Z.
Oh, no. Look out. Here he comes. Because it fits. You would never say that. Right.
But it's such a weird thing because you're dealing with translation. You're dealing with then trying to fit it to. And then what I didn't realize myself until I got into it was how even certain phrases that maybe you would say don't necessarily work, right? Like there's just like a mental block where you're like, I'm not going to say, I'm going to purchase this at the store. You're going to say, no, I'm going to go to the store and buy something, right? Yes. Like it's a weird thing, but there is a certain natural cadence to the way that you speak as well.
100%.
And as someone who's the least experienced in this realm, I think that's the thing that just the idea of what you two are talking about gives me anxiety, because there's no way if you were to give me a sentence and say repeat the sentence, I'm gonna say it in a totally, I'll get the point, right? But it's gonna be obulated, right? It's like the Seinfeld. These pretzels are making me thirsty.
These pretzels are making me thirsty.
Right. I mean, it's like I could not deliver it consistently every single time the same way. There's no way.
Well, I mean, and everyone has had the experience where like you say a word or you write a word enough and you type it out and you go, that is not how this word is spelled. And you just like can't see that like that's exactly how the word is spelled. And then with commercial stuff, there just comes a point where you have to let it go because nothing makes sense. Like the way you move your body doesn't make sense. The way you talk doesn't make sense. It's not how humans do things, right? But you're not a human. You're not being a human. You are being something else. You're being a fictional representation of reality. And once you can get to a point where you can just accept that, then you can kind of let it go. But at the same time, they cast you because of some personal things that you brought. They probably saw dozens of people do the same thing as you. So what is it about you that made it different, and that what got you in the room? But yeah, the washing dishes thing, I messed up, because it's not like theater, you do it small. It's camera, you do it small. I screwed up. Theater is big because you're playing to the person in the last row. Camera's right here, and in voiceover, they're in your head, so you have to do it even smaller. But yeah, they're all different. They're all unique.
So, it seems to me, based on this conversation and just having gotten to know you a little bit, you have three great passions, right? It seems like you have your love for theater, you have your community activism, and then we didn't talk about it on the show, but I know you have a marketing background as well. So you brought all of these together and created the show that we've, kind of mentioned about 30 times so far, called
Dancing Around It All Night.
Right, we've been dancing around it all night. We're here now, called Good Evening with Pat Whalen. And can you talk about how that show came to be?
Boy, howdy, can I. Thought you'd never ask. So I mentioned after I got out of school, really it was during school, I became a company member of Jackalope Theater Company, which is actually based in Edgewater. They work out of the Broadway Armory. So there's more coming from them, Alex. Keep your ears peeled. And or follow them everywhere online at Jackalope Theater, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We might have a TikTok. I don't know.
Be sure to check the link in the episode. We will post it.
Yes, jackalopetheater.org. Great outfit. Exploring the idea of the American mythos is what we were doing at the time and what it meant to be American. And we were certainly, diversity was something that was a very liberal-minded school like Columbia and a very liberal theater department. We talked a lot about what it meant to be American, and we did our best at that time and at that stage in our lives to explore what that meant through our art. And we eventually got to a place we found a little bit of commercial success. We, through our, I believe, development director at the time, Andrew Burden Swanson, who now runs Edgewater Castle Football Club. I won't push it, but he might be a good interview for you guys. He runs Edgewater Castle Football Club, great soccer team. Yeah, I will put in a good word. He's standing up at my wedding, so he'll listen. Anyway, he finagled with the Chicago Park District that we have a space at the Broadway Armory. And so we did some shows there, including Exit Strategy, which was the big home run for us and for me personally, and the director, Gus Maneri, and the writer, Ike Holter. And it really helped our company gain a status monetarily as well as creatively in the city. And so we got enough money, where I'm getting at, to have a storefront space, which was also on Thorndale. It's now used by a different theater company whose name escapes me. Anyway, we used it as a rehearsal space for us, and when we weren't using it, we rented out to other companies. But after 7, 8 o'clock, it wasn't used for rehearsals because that's when rehearsal was over. And so our artistic director at the time, AJ Ware, was like, if anyone has a good idea of what to do with this off hours, let me know. And as I mentioned earlier, I was watching a lot of Daily Show, a lot of Colbert Report. I had a lot of political opinions from way back. And I said, I think I have an idea. And so I basically eventually arrived at the very standard talk show host format, which is a monologue, a musical guest, an interview, and other creative, things throughout, combined with my love of civics. And so trying to get my peers more interested in issues that affect them and the people who help shape, the reality that they experience in Chicago. And so we'd had everyone on, from people from the CTA to explore what a public-private partnership is, to Deborah Shore, who was a MWRD commissioner, a Metropolitan Water Reclamation District commissioner, and is now the EPA, this district here in the Midwest. Candidate Lightfoot, head of the police board Lightfoot, candidate Pritzker, and many others. And we've honed it to a degree where it's obviously very different now, but that is where it started on Thorndale Ave under Jackalope Theater Company's banner at the Frontier. It was called.
That's amazing. I had no idea it started 2 blocks away from where I live right now.
Yes, sir.
So that's really cool. And I know you already mentioned, like, you've had the governor on your show, right? Like, you've had some serious, significant people in Illinois and also just globally, right? I mean, these are important people who are making important decisions that affect millions of lives. You know, one of the things that I found fascinating, because I attended, we talked about it earlier, I attended one of your airings, is your show is naturally political, right? And you're funny, right? Like, or somebody's funny, right? Maybe it's you or somebody else is writing these jokes. I don't know. Someone's writing you funny jokes. I don't know if it's you or not. But the thing is, like, you naturally have to make fun of what could be potential guests. And I'm just very curious how you navigate that, because it's like you want to stay true to being a politically show, but you also, as you talked about, right, with your golden apple, you got to call a spade, right? So how do you navigate that?
You beat me to it, but that is it. Satire is this apple. Satire is me remembering that what we're trying to do is, we can do cheap shots all day. At one point throughout the course of the show, we could do, a show just on Kardashians, right? Like, we could do jokes all day long about cheap shots that have nothing to do with what the crux and idea and direction and values of the show are and should be. But that isn't what satire is. The Tonight Show under Johnny Carson and Jack Parr was very different than what it is under Jimmy Fallon, and at the end of the day, the political realities of these satirical jokes, first of all, are the shifting sands in the desert of Chicago politics. Things are always different. Things come and go. People forget. One of my favorite things that I would always watch before I did an interview was the clip of David Letterman interviewing Paris Hilton, I think in 2009 or something, 2012, something like that. And it was very clear that she was on a rehab tour of her image. It was doing a lot of, perfume advertisements and stuff like that, because she had just gotten out of jail. And it was very clear that she was doing all these talk shows because she wanted to rehab her image and have everyone forget that she had just gotten out of jail. And so I'm sure her publicist obviously had a conversation with every show she went on about how, please don't talk about that. We're here to talk about the new movie or the new book or the new fragrance. And the Letterman interview went like this, if you'll indulge me. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, it's great to be here. Well, you're here in New York. Do you like New York? Yes, I was raised in New York. Awesome. Well, what do you like better, LA or New York? Well, I was raised in New York, but I live in LA now, so I like it better. How'd you like being in jail?
Oh.
And that's hilarious that he would say that to her. But why? Why did Letterman say that? He didn't just do it because it was a cheap shot, because he knew that she was trying to avoid it. He eventually, in the conversation, and it's not that far into it, and you can watch it on YouTube. God knows I have. He gets to a point where he's like, well, you went to jail for a DUI, and there's a lot of young people who look up to you, and this is a huge platform, so maybe it would be cool for you to say how you regret that and how wrong it was, You go, no, you don't want to, no. And then the rest of the interview is absolutely so painful. But that's the idea of satire, that if you are going to make people uncomfortable in front of others, if you're going to talk shit, it has to be for a very, very good reason. And the good reason can't be based on because it's funny right now. It has to be based on, a value system. And that's something that I put a lot of thought into with a lot of very smart and capable people who are very close to me all throughout the life of this creative project. So when it comes to cheap shots, probably my favorite would be about Rahm, who I never really dreamed we were going to get. But, Rahm Emanuel is ready to finalize plans for a training facility for Chicago police officers on the Southwest Side. Should cost about, oh no, I didn't say cost about. So he's investigating this training academy on the Southwest Side. But hey, it's a pretty good deal. It only costs us 50 public schools.
Oh.
Pretty good, because he shuttered 50 public schools, and that's fucked up. And what do you get on the other side of that? You got a training academy for police officers.
You know, it's so interesting because, you know, in that example you gave about Dave Letterman, I mean, Paris Hilton was physically there, right? Like he interviewed her. And I just think about like the complexity of, okay, even if they're not there, right? Like you're doing your monologue, and you know, how do you be true to the audience, be true to yourself, while also making sure that you're not getting blackballed? I mean, like, you know, Chicago, you know, Pat, you and I know this, and Ron, you're probably quickly learning being on, you know, so many Chicago guests. We have a whole host of characters running our town, right? I mean, most of them I think are good-hearted, but a whole host of them are just hilarious. I mean, the alleged situation where Lori Lightfoot apparently was saying that she had the biggest dick in Chicago, right? Like that was a thing. And Ron, I don't know if you know about that. That made news. Like
I heard about that.
She said she had the biggest dick in all of Chicago, and like part of me would want to like totally make fun of her for that, but it's like I also kind of hope she comes. Like I would love to have her on Between Two Studs. I don't think that's going to happen, but like I don't know if she would be on the show if I was making fun of her every episode because she says she has the biggest dick in the city. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes. No, I absolutely understand. And to be clear, for the episode that you were at the Hideout and the one before that, I literally tried to reserve the Wienermobile so that I could advertise our show as having the biggest dick in Chicago.
That is awesome. Grade A marketing.
So
I love it.
They did not respond. I did not get them to arrive. And I also didn't tell them, it's a joke about the mayor. But I've interviewed Lightfoot twice, and I think that she would know that that's funny. You know, so
yeah.
If you would make that joke, like in a very real sense, would she be like, you're blackballed and I'm never going to speak to you again? Because like she actually said that. If we're being practical, she's probably looking at it and saying, I need to laugh this off. I need it to go away.
Right.
And that's why I mentioned the shifting sands. The other part of this is that I pay such close attention to the political, you know, machinations of the city that I never want to talk down to my audience, especially if we're doing a monologue joke. So I don't want to try to educate them. I want to try to meet them where they're at. That's what makes things funny. If you sneak up on them with the you know, it only costs us 50 public schools thing. I didn't have to explain that. I didn't have to explain that to Ron. He doesn't even live here. He knew the structure of that joke implied that Rom closed 50 public schools. He doesn't know the proclivities and like the extreme details of that. But if you can meet folks where they're at, like structurally. And so what I have are a trusted cadre of folks who I will just constantly go, is this funny? Is this funny? Is this funny? And some of them are writers. Some of them are more journalisty. Some of them were stand-up comedians and really understand like the science of jokes. And so I am very lucky. I want to say I pride myself, but I'm very lucky in that these people want to help me kind of construct these things in a way, not only specific jokes, but entire arcs of episodes around the idea that we can take cheap shots all day. But if we want folks to learn something, then we can still sneak up on them with a punchline du jour without beating up on someone who we would eventually like to come on and talk with us. Because again, if someone does have a foible or, you know, a faux pas or, you know, say they have the biggest dick, it's out there. It's reality.
Yeah.
It's the truth. And, you know, so if you tell the right joke and don't punch down, then you're not going to piss anybody off. They're going to be like, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And I think you made a really good point about leveling with your audience, because it's true. You have a generally sophisticated enough audience where if you're too elementary, they're going to be almost offended, right? Like, don't patronize.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. The last thing I wanted to ask you about your show, because I know we're running out of time, but I know music is. I know the episode I attended was a band I'd never heard of before called the Omise.
Oh,
and
never heard of them? Wow.
They were incredible, right? And so, how do you source your musical guests? I mean, it's incredible.
Again, I'm very lucky to be tapped in through, specifically coming up in my theater background, that I'm very tapped into a lot of very creative, successful people. I don't say that because I source these things through them. I certainly will take their counsel, and I will certainly try to, keep up with their endeavors. Some folks who are near and dear to me are John Shakora and Aaron Kilmurray, who run the Fly Honey Show, which I don't know if you've heard of, Alex, but is something to behold and will actually be happening, I believe, this coming weekend. 3 shows that you should probably, if you're going to do me a solid, we can plug in the doobly-doop. And it's kind of indescribable. It's a burlesque show. It's a live music show. It's a concert. It's very political. And so I kind of say that because there's kind of a gumbo going on of creativity in Chicago scenes that I'm, again, lucky enough to kind of be tapped into either digitally or through print, like through the Chicago Reader. I keep up with Lior Galil, who is an incredible, probably the best music journalist that we have here in Chicago, and pays very close attention to not only punk and hip-hop scenes, but also very offbeat stuff, kind of in the way we were talking about theater, with the, experimental in the way of music, which is not something I'm practiced in, but do appreciate the science and math of, as well as the, kind of artistic side of it. So what I'm kind of getting at is I look for it. I look really fucking hard, and I try to pay attention to things that are in my blind spot. That's what always helped me, and it always serves me through the show. Politically speaking, comedically speaking, musically speaking, if I try to look at my blind spot, what I'm not naturally gravitating towards, then I can find things that I think can make a great palette for the show. And the musical part is such a crucial part, not only in like the math of what a late night talk show classically is, but in what sets the tone, and the tone of the Omise is so unique, and we had constraints with what the Hideout was able to provide, and the Omise could strip down what they did, because they did an album release show the week before that I think I mentioned at the show that you were at. That was a full band with horns and keyboards and
oh wow,
yeah, a huge production that I think you can hear more closer on their album. But what we had for your listening audience, and for Ron, which Ron, you ever come out, you're on the list.
Thank you.
Was just an acoustic guitar, their voices, and a Korg, a keyboard. But even that was just amazing, and just such a great tone, and such talented people. So I source it by looking really fucking hard and trying to pay attention to what Chicago has to offer artistically, because we have plenty of people coming through to tour, but I strive to have locals on to showcase to our audience the full spectrum of what Chicago has to offer, politically, culturally, musically. Good evening, Lee.
So I heard that you're getting married. I know you were talking to us a little bit about it, hinting at it throughout the episode. Would you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Yes. So
and congratulations, by the way, of course. I forgot to throw that out there.
No, that's quite all right. It was implied. I am getting married, ironically, to my fiance, which is small world.
Wow.
No. Yeah. My beautiful fiance, Emily, has agreed to marry me. After 10 years, I finally wore her down and have asked her to join me in the holy sacrament of marriage. I'm thrilled, frankly. I was one of those guys who thought it was all very silly, pomp and circumstance, an industry. Why bother? It's an expense. Who cares? And she really, as she always does, has helped me to see what's really important about life. She really, I'm very cynical while I am very funny and charismatic. I can be very cynical. And she helps me see and understand the importance of the beauty of the little things of life. She's very drawn to nature. She works for a nonprofit called Open Lands that deals with securing native spaces, which I could go on and on about, but that's kind of where she comes from. And so the idea of marriage to me was very silly, to be honest, throughout the years of our courtship. But she helped me understand that it's important that we make an exchange of these vows, of this commitment to each other in front of people that we care about. And it's going to be a humdinger. We're doing it at Northerly Island, which is off the beaten path for a lot of Chicago folks. But if you go out to the planetarium, right, and then hang a right and just keep going, if you're looking at Soldier Field, right, and you're facing the lake, if you go over Soldier Field, there's actually a harbor for boats. On the other side of that harbor is another strip of land, and that's called Northerly Island. And it used to be an airport until Richard Daley, the son, destroyed the runway with bulldozers in the middle of the night against the will of the federal government, for which the FAA...
Yeah, was that like 2002, something like that?
Yeah,
that was
early 2000s.
Story.
Yeah, one of my favorite parts of that is that they shone a spotlight on the cameras of the airport. So the streets and sanitation shone a spotlight on the cameras of the airport so that they didn't know what they were doing. But the mayor called in, illegally, bulldozers to carve giant X's in the runway so that planes could not land or take off. And so the FAA had to shut down the airport to the tune of, I believe, $90,000, which not that much for destroying an airport. So not a bad bill from the federal government. You'd think it'd be more than that, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But so it's got that Chicago history element, that political intrigue shit that I love. And now it is a natural area that they've converted into prairie grass, and is attracting natural birds from the Midwest. And Chicago is a huge thoroughfare for migrating birds, and so it has that natural element that Emily is more drawn to. So it's just a perfect combo. It was the Cadillac wedding venue. I never thought we'd get it, but it's a Chicago Park District venue. It's open to the public. I'd highly recommend going out there because you have a beautiful view of the skyline and the lake, and there's Soldier Field, and there's all these boats, and there's a concert venue. It's just a very cool spot.
Sounds
so
incredible.
How's it going?
It seems perfect for your situation. And there's a rumor you're going to have Pequods.
That's right. The rehearsal dinner is going to be catered by some sort of Chicago pizza institution. I'm pulling for Italian Fiesta, Vito's and Nick's, and Pequods. But I don't think we can just logistically, realistically make that happen. So Pequods isn't too far away. So I will have a lot of Buffalo people in town. So relevant to our discussion earlier.
Love it.
My impulse is to give them kind of a tour of Chicago-style pizza to kind of open them up to what the possibilities are. And if Pequods has to be the only one, then so be it. It's not a bad one-off example.
I totally agree. So, Pat, when is the big date?
Yeah. It is soon. It's soon. Well, I mean, any day now. No, it's Friday, October 14th. Friday, October 14th. October in Chicago is...
I was going to say, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Right. It's considered by many, when you look at the calendar, as a roll of the dice, but anyone who remembers Octobers of the last 5 years knows it's probably going to be pretty nice. And that's the nature of Chicago. Being at Northerly Island, we will be as ventilated as possible, COVID stuff. We're welcoming every person who is near and dear to us from across the country, so we want to be as safe as we can. So there's a giant tent, and it'll be well ventilated. But I have a feeling it's going to be a very nice weather on that day.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, it was 98 degrees pretty much the week that we've been recording this. So I think October in Chicago will be great. So
beautiful.
Congratulations to you on that. That's fantastic.
Congratulations.
Excited to see pictures of it. So listen, last question of the night. For everyone out there, how do we keep in touch with Pat Whalen?
I'm huge on LinkedIn. Check me out on Friendster. I'm all over the socials. No, you can follow Good Evening, because Alex, you know this. And so I'll ask Ron. Ron, it's called Good Evening with Pat Whalen, but how good is it? It's the best evening ever. That's how good it is. And that's why you can follow us online at any platform, Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, at Best Evening Ever. Do we post every day? No. No, we don't. But, when we do have something to drop, that's where we put it. So follow us online at Best Evening Ever.
That's the quality control working through.
Well, I was going to say, on a particularly good evening is when you're prone to the post.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, it's a live show, and we try to do it monthly. But I will say, and this is a Between Two Studs exclusive. Okay. No one else has this information right now, including all our at Best Evening Evers. We just inked a deal with Land and Sea Department, a very hip restaurant ownership situation here in Chicago. And so we are looking at the Chicago Athletic Association for our next show, which is on Michigan Avenue, across from Millennium Park, right in the heart of downtown. We're also talking to the California Clipper in Westtown. We're hoping to have some awesome guests for that in the next month or two. So really do stay tuned, because we had to cancel our last show because I thought I had COVID, which really sucked. But it's live, and so we're going to drop what we can to let folks know what our next hip, cool, awesome show will be at Best Evening Ever. And it's going to be a badass venue, I assure you of that, with great guests and an okay host.
Congratulations on the awesome news.
Thank you.
Fantastic. And we can't wait to see you. I'm excited for your next episode. I'll do my best to be there in person and support you. And other than that, thank you so much, Pat. This has been a real delight. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for being Between Two Studs.
Thank you, guys. This has been a riot. Keep up the great work. And, if I can shave my beard and come on as someone else, let me know.
Thank you.